Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Doctor Who. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, just, basically because of coupons and whatnot, Graham was able to kind of get the whole gang on they won a trip to basically a vacation, essentially. And I thought it was kind of interesting because even Yaz was like, oh yeah, maybe it'll help fix the doctor's, because the doctor's kind of been a little moody or something. I think Yasmin had said oh, fix your mood or something. She's like, there's nothing wrong with my mood, which is so kind of showing that obviously the doctor's still dealing with everything she learned last episode. Obviously still processing all of it, still dealing with it herself, not letting the others know about it. So that's an interesting thing. But then they go on vacation. Everyone kind of separates and does their own thing. The dot's I'll kind of look around. I'm skipping all around, but it's interesting because I think it's fascinating how, to me, it seemed like the doctor was more antsy this episode. The doctor's always very talkative, always moving around and stuff like that. But it just seemed like this episode in particular, she seemed like she was all over the place a little bit. She couldn't sit still. Because it's almost like everyone else is trying to relax. She's like, oh, I'll go check the place out. I think it's just because I think it's this situation of being alone right now means kind of being alone with your thoughts. And it's if she has the others around, it's oh, we go out there, we go adventuring and stuff like that. She doesn't have to think about what she learned about last episode about Gallifrey and everything. So, and the master's words of we've been lied to our entire lives. So I think it's that thing of and I think it's kind of like a defense mechanism we all have. We kind of distract ourselves. And I think that's what this all is. The doctor is kind of almost running away, from everything. I don't know whether it's something she's really currently looking into. Maybe it's kind of happening in the background, but it just seems like I said, she's just distracting herself. But like I said, to me, it just seemed like she was more antsy this episode. But it's this, place called Tranquility. And obviously Graham's the most excited about it. He's I'm going to sit there for 3 hours. And I'm going to sit over here I'm going to sit over there for another 3 hours. And then I'll get me a drink and stuff like that. He's definitely enjoying it. Obviously not all is well at this, this spa and everything, this vacation spot. And so it turns into this whole thing of for one, there's I forgot what the doctor called it, but it's a multi-platform virus. It went from a machine to Ryan, and she's helping him out and everything, and makes him sneeze it out. And I love that. And she's like, okay, suck on your thumb and do know that all the bats you're seeing are not real. And he starts seeing bats and he's flapping them away. I'm like, that's so interesting in the long run. I thought that was, pretty neat. I was like, but it is interesting to see that, there's a multi-platform virus type of situation. But obviously there's a lot going on at this place, because it's suddenly where because I said, it starts off oh, happy, relaxing, but obviously it's Doctor Who, so it's not going to stay that way for long. But then there's that couple, Benny and Vilma, that Yaz met, and I was almost bummed. I was oh, he was about to propose, and Yaz kind of ruined it with her timing, because he was oh, we've been together for 40 some years, and she's oh, we don't need to get married to kind of because Benny had seen a newlywed couple, and it kind of got him thinking about it. He was about to propose, but I was oh, please don't tell me you're never going to have the chance to. But it seems sadly, skipping around, he never did get the chance, because all of a sudden the place gets attacked by these creatures known as the Dreg. That's really interesting, because even the doctor started piecing stuff together. I love that she was talking to Hyphen, and she pulls out the psychic paper, and she starts talking off titles, and then Hyphen was kind of looking no, that's not what that says. She goes, does another title, strike 2, strike 3, and then she's it's this, and then Hyphen looks at her, she's yes, I got it. I was why? I'm trying to figure out why. I guess because the doctor was in such a hurry. I'm why didn't you just let the psychic paper do its work? The doctor usually lets the psychic paper speak for itself and be someone they'll read it back and she'll be oh, that's what it says. Huh, interesting. Okay. But it's I guess because she just assumed it was going to be this and that, but it was nope, not that, not that, not that. This one. Yes. So I thought that was kind of, an interesting little detail. But she had noticed that the fact of the matter is the place had a membrane security system, but she was even why would it have a system like that if this is a vacation spot? Why would it need that type of defense? Well, I also think it's interesting in the grand scheme of things, I guess, because the membrane system kind of acted as the only defense necessary, because I'm you only had literally 2 security people. And it's actually super sad, because most literally, and when you actually break it down, I think this is the most deaths that's ever happened in an episode, right? because usually like maybe one or two people in the confines of like the group might die, but like it was like 20 some people at the beginning. It got whittled down to what basically like in the grand scheme of things, including our main characters, like 8 people. That's a whole lot of people that died. That's nuts. I could be remembering wrong, but I don't think we've ever had like that many deaths all at once in the show. That was like most of the guests ended up getting wiped out early enough, but that was just sad. Because it's also interesting because, you know, Ryan at the same time met this girl Bella. In the grand scheme of things, it should have been a clue that she definitely had something to do with this. Like I said, I'm skipping around because she was already sucking on her thumbs, but it could just be like, oh, maybe she'd already interacted with the virus, so you wouldn't think too much of it, but it's like, oh, she had interaction with the virus because she had implanted it herself, so she kind of got infected at the same time. I think that's kind of what that is when you think about it, like going backwards. I think that's what that's supposed to be kind of implying, but nevertheless, Ryan is trying to impress her, saying that he's like a surgeon. He's like, no, I'm a pilot. I'm a surgeon of pilots and stuff like that. And she's almost kind of like, is that supposed to work? You know? And it seems like it did, but he piqued her interest. So I was like, hey. So that was interesting. Obviously, you know, with everything going down, I love that. It was a really sweet moment of Graham looking for Ryan later on when it's like, wait, because they don't know where Ryan is, and he's like, Graham, and he's like, oh, and Graham hugs Ryan, and he's like, oh, like, it's not going to be the monsters that kill me, it's going to be worried about you. I'm like, oh, that's super sweet. But basically, these creatures known as the dregs have been attacking, but it's like, the reason why, it's because it turns out that this whole facility, this vacation, was built on a planet that's known as an orphan planet. Now, it's really interesting diving into understanding that basically these are planets that have basically become uninhabitable, because basically the more elite people get off the planet first, and then everyone left is kind of left to their devices to figure out, like, what do we do in this situation? And obviously everything on this particular planet got worse and worse and worse, and it turns into a situation of, once it became like that, like the planet became completely inhabitable except for these creatures known as the Dreg. And, you know, because it turns out the entire like facility, that their tranquility is it's fake. Like the walls are fake because there's a certain boundary. Like once you step to it, you enter like what is essentially the walls of the dome, but it meant to, you know, kind of make you feel like, oh, like, because they want you to think the place is safe, because essentially they by putting the tranquility on Orphan Planet, they actually lower the cost for people to go there, because it's because like without you really knowing it, you're not in a safe location, because literally the planet is super inhabitable. You step out those boundaries, the air is not compatible for humans to breathe in and stuff like that. So it's just kind of crazy in the grand scheme of things, kind of finding out, like, well, for one, that you set up, because like I think the doc was saying, like, typically this isn't how like vacations work. Usually it's, the facility will be somewhere in a safe, a city or whatever. It's never like on a foreign planet like that. Even if it was, it'd be on a planet that's safe, not in a literally dangerous territory like that. But in the long run, it's because the doctor ends up kind of getting the information pumped from Kane and her colleague that basically the whole point of this was because a company was trying to start things off here, build up enough money, and then you can like get rid of the dregs, and then you can turn this orphan planet into a full-blown like staycation. So that way, like, you reap all the benefits and make all the money from it. Like it's meant to be a gigantic profit venture, it's kind of the grand scheme of things, which is like, that's crazy to think about. And like, once again, that's why I'm kind of like, it's so crazy that you literally have like 2 people on staff. I mean, technically 3 people on staff who know what's going on, but it's just, that seems, and only 2 of them being like guards that can kind of deal with everything. But I guess it's like, it's that thing of like, we've never had issues before now, but obviously once again, Bella interfered with everything, like, because it's like, oh, we've got, which kind of reminds me of the Charlie situation last season, which is kind of a bummer, because it's like, oh, Charlie seemed like he was a good guy, but in the grand scheme of things, he had his own vendetta to kind of, against the whole Kablam situation. And obviously Bella's kind of in a similar situation, but I just thought that was interesting. Benny has somehow managed to get outside, and so it's like, we got to go get him. Obviously Kane was super against it, but it's like, Vilma was like, no, we got to get him. And, everyone else is kind of like, he's out there, he's in danger, so we got to go. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and obviously, like, also the devices that were interesting too, because it's like it turns non-oxygen into oxygen. Like, oh no, it recharges in oxygen filled areas. Jesus, I'm sorry. So I thought that was kind of an interesting, smart device. I'm also skipping over some other interesting stuff. The little boy, was it Silas? That's the little kid who played Roger in his Dark Material. So it's like so interesting to see that turn around so quickly. But also his dad is played by James Buckley. Which I think the thing he's kind of best known for is the In-Betweeners. I've never seen the In-Betweeners. I need to take time to like watch that because I'm interested. I just never taken the time to watch it. But I think that's one of the things he's best known for. I really know him because obviously he's popped up in Achievement Hunter stuff in the past because I know Jeff and Gavin are big fans of the In-Betweeners. So I was like, oh my god, it's James Buckley. I literally lost my shit. I was like, oh, that's so crazy. But never like that was an interesting dynamic where it's like, oh, he's kind of like the mechanic, but really it's his son who's actually the super genius about mechanical stuff. But I guess it's the whole thing of like you're the father, you never want your son to kind of be too much smarter than you because you want to be able to say nah, I'm the one, I got this kid, you don't know what you're talking about, son, type of situation. So but yeah, but there was even this moment between Bella and Ryan. I thought was kind of this sweet moment that they were having where it's just kind of them talking because she talked about like losing her dad, and obviously Ryan can understand because he lost his mom, and she's like, my mom died when I think she said when she was like younger. So I thought that was kind of an interesting situation because obviously Ryan's going through some loss. He lost his mom, and he lost Grace, his nan, last season and everything. So but I thought that was kind of interesting. And I kept wondering, I was like, is Yaz going to say anything? And Yaz is, because the doctor comes over, and I love the doctor just had to kill the moose. She's like, oh, what's up, guys? So I was like, what's happening here? And it's just like, nothing, just talking. And Yaz is like, yeah, so what are you guys talking about, Ryan? And he's like, dead parents. I'm like, why'd you have to say it like that? I mean, it's true, yeah, but still. But part of me wondered if Yaz was going to say something because I'm like, because that's the thing. I can't tell whether Yaz has a thing for Ryan or not because they brought that up last season and be like, no, it's not like that. But part of me wonders if it is because that'd be why she's super. Well, because it's also like the whole thing of like, you're my friend and I don't want you and my sister getting together because that'd be weird. But part of me, like, they never made much of it. That was just like the only extent of it. But part of me was wondering if Yaz was like, oh, like if they were going to kind of play that up a little bit, maybe at like, oh, maybe Yaz acts a little like I thought maybe that was an angle they would play up, but it's like no, they didn't. So it makes kind of cements it more in my mind of like, yeah, that's probably not an angle they're going to go down the whole Yaz and Ryan thing. It's probably like we're mates, that's it, nothing more, nothing less, type of situation. So I thought that was kind of an interesting element to it. But then like the dregs, which I should also note, the dregs, just because of what they are, because basically they kind of remind me of. I don't remember what it was. Like the entire episode, I was staring at them. I was like, they remind me of something. Because one of the things they remind me of is Doomsday from the DC universe. Because he literally operates the same way they do, in a sense that he constantly adapts to every weapon and environment. So it makes it killing him super hard. So he's like the dregs kind of remind me of that. But there was something else. I kept thinking like, oh, these remind me of this, but I can't remember what. It literally probably won't be until tomorrow where it hits me. I'm like, oh yeah, they remind me of this. Whatever the case may be. But the fact of the matter is, the vehicle gets stuck. And there was that moment with Benny. I was almost hoping they'd be able to save Benny. Because I didn't know what to make of that scene at first. Because he's like, oh, he's calling for Velma. And I'm like, oh, it's the dregs using his voice, aren't they? They're messing with her or something like that. But it's like, oh, no, it's actually him. And he's asking her it's like, oh, will you marry me and everything? And she's like, yes. And he's like, second thing, can you kill me? Because and even like later on, Kane kills him, which everyone's like, how could you do that? What's wrong with you? But it's like, he asked me to, because it's like, I think she never really gets into it, but it seems like it's more like it was a mercy killing. Like the dregs, they would have tortured him or something, so it's like, I did him a favor. But then I start thinking like, could it be that the dregs actually transform you into them or something like that's what I started kind of wondering all about. But it turns out not to be the case at all. But still, that was just kind of sad. It's like, oh, went out there to save Benny, but it was kind of all for nothing. Kane's partner ended up dying, and it's like, man, this is just, it's like one after another. And then Bella turns on him. I'm like, what? Like I said, I kind of had an inkling that she was behind all this. Then the twist to find out she's Kane's daughter, I was like, I wasn't expecting that. So for her, it's like her mom wasn't really around in her life, which I'm like, more stuff that Ryan can understand. His dad kind of disappeared for a good chunk of his life too, so it's like, but this situation is a little bit different. Like she kind of felt like, oh, my mom doesn't even recognize me. She hasn't, like, she missed all my birthdays. She wasn't there for me growing up. So it's like she came here because she wanted to destroy this tranquility place as a means of burning down this something that my mom spent so much time dedicated to. But the sad thing is, because Kane talks about it later on, she's like, I built all this up because all the money I was doing, like I was building this up for her, like, you know, so that she would have something, you know, whether it be like the money they were going to make to this, she was going to send back to her. It's that complicated thing of like, you try your best in your own way, but sadly Bella just ended up growing up resenting her, especially, you know, her dad died, like, you know, so that, and it's like, you weren't there for me even during that time, you know, so like I said, it also has to hurt that it's like, oh, you are, you also don't recognize me because it has been that long too. So I was like, that's an interesting development. And obviously, like, she had set up bombs all around the facility and was going to blow the place up. And Ryan's trying to talk her out of it. But then I even thought it was kind of interesting because she almost thought there was a Bonnie and Clyde thing. She's like, no, I thought you were on my side. And he's like, you know, trying to stop her. Because she's like, if you get my way, I will shoot you. And he just lowers the gun. And then a bomb had exploded somewhere else. She's like, yeah, that was in the spa area. I mean, I was going to, you know, explode only when, like, no one else was around, you know, so it's like kind of showing like she wasn't trying to hurt people, she was just trying to burn this place to the ground. So it's like there's that. The doctor's also using up so much oxygen because she's talking so much. It's like, well, I mean, that's kind of what the doctor does, because she's trying to figure everything out because she's talking a lot, because nobody was telling her information about the orphans and stuff like that, which is interesting. Because once again, circling back to that, the planet's called Orphan 55 because even the doctor was like, honestly, the whole practice of an orphan planet is honestly not. It happens a lot more often than you think. So at the bare minimum, there's at least 55 planets like this. Granted, there's probably a lot more, but that's kind of sad and depressing to think about. Like, oh man, there's like 55. Like I said, at least uninhabitable planets, and I thought that was interesting. And then we had that interesting situation where like the doctor was running low on air, and she gets near one of those creatures and she breathes them in. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Wait, I was like, so these things produce oxygen. I was like, oh, so they take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. And then like she comes across a sign, and then like Graham and Yaz come over. She's like, no, let's not look. And they're like, what is this? This looks Russian. And it's like, it's Siberia, and it's like a Siberian. I was like, this is Earth. I'm like, whoa! I wasn't expecting that. So all those creatures out there were, and they end up finding out later on because they can do that, because she ended up looking into like what is essentially the lead dreg. She looked in its head and saw everything that went down, and basically this is Earth's future. And it's like, holy crap, that's heavy. And that means that literally all those dregs are mutated humans, that they're the humans that were left behind that basically got mutated and adapted to this environment and became what those things are. And I'm like, that's rough. That's extremely rough. And then you have like, Kane sacrificing herself. It's like, hey, make sure Bella's okay. The fact of the matter is I failed as a mom, but at least I can do this. So they go, I love how this episode is structured in the sense that nothing's resolved. Like what went down in that future, like that world, that Earth being like that, that's like, it's not like, oh, they saved the day and fixed the problem. Like, it's honestly like a lot of people die, and it's just like, it's actually kind of a sad episode when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, because like nothing changed. I mean, there's a silver lining of things can change. Whether they will or not is a whole other thing. But I mean, it's kind of sad too, because Bella literally started this, and like you didn't want people to die, but it's like you got a whole bunch of people killed. So that's actually super sad. And luckily, Silas and his dad, more so Silas, was able to get the transporter working, and obviously Bella wanted to stay behind to kind of give them time, because there's too many people in the teleporter, wasn't enough, and it would take too long to get everyone out of there and everything, so she stays behind. But luckily, who shows up? Her mom, Kane Super Love. I'm like, hey, there's a silver lining of like, hey, at the very least, they're together in all of this, but it's still kind of sad, like her and Ryan, like, because she kissed Ryan before she went to try, sacrifice herself, but literally Kane's there firing off. So it's like, I'm assuming that both of them are going to be able to. Well, because the thing is, there's no guarantee they got there the same way, transporter wise. So, like, probably when they both get on transporter, they're both going to get sent at different places. But literally, that's sad. All the survivors literally scattered because everyone's kind of going back to where they were. So it's like, because there's no guarantee Ryan's going to run into her again, especially because that means she's from the future. So it's like, wow, that's nuts. And so it's like, how long did you know it was the Earth? The moment Doc saw the sign, because at first I was like, wait, is it going to be something written in Gallifreyan? That's what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting it to be in like an Earth language. And I'm like, oh. And so that's interesting because now, but for them, it's like, so that's what our future is. But the Doc is like, the doctor, I just called her Doc. The doctor is like, the fact of the matter is, this is one of many possibilities, but the fact of the matter is, if you don't change, like, where we are right now, like society-wise here on Earth, it's like global warming, like wars and stuff like that. Like, the fact of the matter is, we kind of take for granted the Earth and stuff like that, and it's like, if we aren't careful, if we don't make a change now, then that could be our possibility. But it's like, the fact of the matter is, we have that chance, we have that opportunity. So it's like, if we don't want Earth to end up like that, which is like, that's so grim to think that, like, yeah. And that's what, because it also makes you wonder, whatever happened to the quote unquote elites of Earth who ended up escaping before everything went down on Orphan 55. Because the fact of the matter is, when you think about that in the grand scheme of things, that might just be Earth, but remember, like, there's other orphan planets, so that means there's plenty of planets that have plenty of homes that were turned into a similar situation. It's kind of, like I said, it's actually a bummer of an episode when you actually think about that. Like I said, there's a lesson to be learned from it, but it's still just kind of like, that's actually kind of, sad in a, grand scheme of things. So it's like, if we're not careful, obviously, like, what would that in Orphan 55 will be what's happened. But maybe the argument could be, because, time isn't 100% set in stone, things can change. Because humans are, make billions of choices. Billions of choices can shape a planet. When you have that opportunities as humans, and not just them. Because I'm sure the doctor's very passionate about this too, because it's like, well, let's not forget, she literally just found out what happened to her planet, which even, obviously, there's still a lot there she doesn't know, but I'm sure it's interesting that this would be the next episode too, in the grand scheme of things, building, like, she doesn't they don't directly within the confines of the show kind of correlate, like, this being a byproduct of what she went through. She would still feel the same way, sure, but it's like, it's got to add extra salt to the wound, because it's a reminder of, like, well, granted, her planet was, more so that her situation was a little different and was the master, but still, it's still kind of a thing of, like, take care of your planet, because you never know. It could be here one instant and gone the next, like her world. That's how I'm, looking at it. But I'd like to try and think silver line-wise. It's like, maybe in the grand scheme of things, all those deaths can be undone, because that's a possible future that obviously. But the thing is, you can make the argument, well, that was Earth 55. Who's to say, like, once again, there's plenty of other orphan planets, so who's to say, like, tranquility in the future doesn't just end up on some other planet, or someone else doesn't try this, so it's kind of like if you want to be pessimistic, I like to be optimistic, to be like, the fact is, if things change in Earth, like, the future is malleable, so all that in the future gets undone. But then again, it's timelines and stuff like that, so, I always forget how Doctor Who's timelines work, I think timelines can parallel exist. I don't think it's, because once again, it's time travel, because some stuff could be like, once you create a new timeline, the original timeline disappears, typically. Other times, it's like, no, like, those timelines, like, once you create a parallel timeline, the other timeline always exists. You're just not following the story on that timeline anymore. So now this might be a parallel timeline from that path that they're on, because maybe they can make changes in their everyday and going back. It's just something to think about. I get very heady about, like, time travel, because it's, a very, like, concept that always gets very heady, like I said, because it depends, because different shows have different, time travel rules. So it's just something interesting to think about in the grand scheme of things. So I'm very interested to see kind of where this all takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.